Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. This time, we're going to be looking at what it takes to be truly original.
Not just thinking outside the box.
Yeah, like building the box, shipping it, convincing everyone it's the best box ever.
That's the real challenge, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
We've got tons of research and real-life stories to go through today.
Looking forward to it.
We'll be taking a lot of our insights from Adam Grant's book, Originals.
Oh, a classic.
Yeah, it dives deep into that psychology behind, original thinking, decision-making, and even how to get people on board with your, let's be honest, crazy ideas.
I love that part.
So are you ready to break down the secrets of nonconformists?
I think so.
I think so, too.
Well, maybe we should start with this idea of vuja day. Have you heard of that?
Bluja Day.
It's like the flip side of deja vu.
Oh, okay.
Instead of that feeling like you've seen something before,
Yeah.
vuja day is looking at familiar things, but with fresh eyes, like you're seeing them for the first time,
I like that.
and questioning why things are the way they are.
Kind of like seeing the world through the eyes of a child always asking why.
Exactly. And it's that ability to question defaults that often leads to some of the most original ideas we see.
I see what you're saying.
Take Warby Parker, for example.
Oh, yeah, the glasses company.
They revolutionized the eyeglass industry just by asking, why are glasses so expensive?
I see where you're going with this.
It was just a default high price.
Not an inevitability.
Right.
They cut out the middleman, sold online, and bam!
High-quality glasses at a fraction of the cost.
Makes you think, what other defaults are we just blindly accepting in our own lives and work?
That's a great question.
Yeah, it's kind of empowering to realize that anybody can be more original.
Absolutely.
You don't need to be some kind of genius.
Not at all.
It's about choosing to challenge those assumptions we've been making.
Making those choices.
Exactly. That makes originality seem way less intimidating.
I hope so.
But I think a lot of us get stuck on the fear of judgment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what if our ideas get shot down or ridiculed?
It's completely natural.
Yeah.
It's something that even the biggest originals in history have had to overcome.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Like who?
Think about Abraham Lincoln.
Yep.
He wasn't always that bold, decisive leader we picture.
Oh, interesting.
He actually hesitated to lead during the Civil War.
He did?
Yeah, he even considered not taking the nomination.
Wow. I never knew that about Lincoln.
It's a different side to him.
Makes you realize that even the most impactful originals, they still experience doubt and fear.
They're human.
It's not about being fearless.
Right.
It's about having the courage to act despite those fears.
Exactly, and the same goes for Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah,
He had anxieties about leading the civil rights movement.
I can imagine.
He initially wanted that quieter life as a pastor and academic.
Makes sense.
It took others encouraging him to step into that leadership role.
It does humanize these, like, larger-than-life figures, right?
It does.
They weren't born nonconformists. They had to work through their own fears and insecurities, just like all of us.
Like us.
Okay, so we know anyone can be more original, but how do we get those original ideas in the first place?
How do we find them?
Yeah, and maybe even more importantly, how do we know if an idea is actually original and worth pursuing?
Well, it's about our mindset.
Okay.
Research shows that judging new ideas depends a lot on if we're thinking like a creator or a manager.
Creator versus manager?
Exactly.
Okay.
Creators, they're more open to new things
Okay.
and better at spotting those original ideas.
Okay.
Managers tend to judge based on what they already know, their past experiences.
Makes sense.
They look for what's familiar, what fits in.
Right.
This can lead to missing out on some huge opportunities.
Oh, totally. Like that whole Seinfeld situation.
You know about that one.
Yeah, it was almost universally hated by test audiences.
I can see why.
It was so different.
From anything else on TV.
Exactly. Imagine a world without Seinfeld.
No soup Nazis.
No festival.
Right.
It's too much to think about.
It is a classic example
Of what?
of how relying on traditional ways of judging can make you reject truly original ideas.
The people judging Seinfeld just didn't have the experience to get it, I guess.
They didn't have the framework.
So how do we avoid falling into that trap?
How do we get better at recognizing originality even when it's something totally new?
Right, because new can be scary.
It's about cultivating that creator mindset.
I like that.
One way is to expose yourself to lots of different ideas and experiences.
Okay.
Step outside that comfort zone.
Like what kinds of things?
Explore different types of art, music, literature.
Oh, okay.
Talk to people from different backgrounds and industries.
Get out there.
It'll broaden your perspective, make you more open to new things.
Just like a mental workout for creativity.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to embrace that beginner's mind.
What's that?
Approach things with curiosity and openness instead of judgment.
Makes sense.
There was this fascinating study about the circus.
Wait, circus research. I'm in.
This researcher, Justin Berg, he studied how different groups predicted the success of circus acts.
Okay.
And he found that the circus performers themselves,
They would know.
they were way better at predicting which acts would be hits
And who?
than the managers and test audiences.
Makes sense to me.
Right.
They were more immersed in that creative world.
Exactly.
They had a better feel for what worked.
The managers and test audiences, they tended to favor familiar acts.
Well, the performers...
They were open to different styles.
It seems like the performers would be more open to that.
And here's the really interesting part. Berg found that just getting managers to think like creators for a few minutes,
Oh, wow.
it drastically improved how well they recognized original ideas.
So you can like prime your mind for novelty.
You can.
That's pretty cool.
Before judging an idea, spend some time brainstorming, exploring new concepts.
To get in that creative headspace.
Exactly. It helps you see the potential in those unconventional ideas.
I like that.
Now, while experience can be valuable,
You would think.
it can also be a double-edged sword.
How so?
Sometimes, all that expertise,
Yeah.
it can actually blind us to truly original ideas.
That is a fascinating paradox.
It is, isn't it?
You'd think experience would make us better at spotting potential.
You would think.
But it sounds like it can make us resistant to change.
Absolutely.
Like with the Segway.
The Segway, what a story.
It was supposed to revolutionize transportation.
It was.
Brilliant minds like Steve Jobs and Jeff Bezos
They were all
thought it was going to be huge, and it totally flopped.
I remember.
I remember seeing those things thinking they looked kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
But why did those brilliant people overestimate its potential so much?
They were blinded by their own experience and expertise.
Ah, I see.
They assumed that just because something was new and technologically impressive, it would automatically be a success.
They missed the mark.
They did. They overestimated how much people would want it. Underestimated how hard it would be to actually use it in everyday life.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So how do we avoid falling into that same trap?
How do we recognize when our own expertise might be clouding our judgment?
You need to know the limits of your own experience.
Okay.
What worked in the past won't always work in the future.
Especially with things changing so fast.
Right. You need to actively seek feedback from people with different backgrounds and viewpoints.
Get those outside opinions.
And most importantly, be willing to challenge your own assumptions.
Okay.
Be open to the possibility that you could be wrong.
I like that because sometimes we can get stuck in our own heads.
You can.
So it's good to have those people around to challenge us.
It's essential.
That reminds us we all have blind spots.
We do.
And sometimes the best way to see them
Is to get a fresh perspective.
from someone outside our usual circles.
Exactly. And speaking of challenging assumptions, let's talk about procrastination.
Procrastination.
I know.
Isn't that like the opposite of productivity?
You would think so.
I don't see the connection to originality.
This is what's so fascinating about it.
Really?
Grant argues that procrastination,
Oh, okay.
when it's strategic,
Strategic procrastination.
it can actually make you more creative.
Okay, now you've got my attention.
It's all about the difference between procrastinating because you're lazy or scared of failing
Right.
and procrastinating on purpose to let those ideas simmer,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
like letting a stew cook.
Don't rush it.
Exactly. Give those flavors time to develop.
I'm starting to get it.
It's not about avoiding work completely. It's about
Giving yourself space.
to let those ideas marinate
Exactly.
before you jump in and start doing things.
There's evidence this type of procrastination can lead to more original and creative outcomes.
Like what did wait?
Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, yeah.
He famously took years to finish the Mona Lisa.
Oh, I can imagine my inner critic just screaming, distractions.
But maybe those distractions were what fueled his creativity.
I guess so.
He would work on other projects in between.
Right. It let his subconscious work on the problem in the background,
Interesting.
leading to those new insights and connections he might not have had if he just forced himself to focus on the Mona Lisa.
I can see that.
But how do we know if we're strategically delaying or just avoiding the work?
Yeah, how do we tell the difference?
That's where intentionality comes in.
Okay.
Think of procrastination as a tool for generating ideas, not executing them.
I like that.
You might delay working on the final version,
Okay.
but use that time to explore different possibilities, gather information, let your mind wander a bit.
It's about being intentional with that time.
Exactly.
Use it to fuel your creativity.
Precisely. even when you're delaying, you're still making progress.
You are.
You're gathering those ingredients, letting them marinate.
Before you start cooking.
Exactly.
It does take the guilt out of procrastination.
Doesn't it?
We can see it as a strategic part of the process.
A part of the process.
Not just a bad habit.
But it does take discipline.
Yeah, you have to trust that those ideas will come
If you give them the space,
to develop.
it's a shift in mindset.
So embrace that more iterative, exploratory approach.
But remember, even the most brilliant ideas, they rarely succeed on their own.
That's true.
This leads us to another crucial part of originality,
What's that?
the ability to build coalitions, rally support for your unconventional ideas,
I like that.
to champion your vision,
Right.
challenge your
And
assumption.
to help you navigate those obstacles
Exactly.
that come with trying to change things.
Grant has some fascinating stories about how originals throughout history have built alliances
Oh, I'd love to hear about those.
and overcome the challenges of bringing different groups of people together to support a common goal.
That's the real challenge, isn't it?
It is.
Bringing people together.
We'll be looking at Lucy Stone and the suffrage movement,
Okay.
which highlights how complex coalition building can be
I bet.
and the importance of navigating different viewpoints.
That sounds really interesting.
It's a reminder that no matter how brilliant your idea is,
Yeah.
you're rarely going to succeed alone.
You need the right people by your side.
You need your team.
For sure. So we've talked about, strategic procrastination and getting other people on board.
Building those coalitions.
Yeah, now let's dive into something else that's interesting.
Ah,
Maybe a little controversial.
sounds good.
The myth of strong cultures.
Ah, yes.
Now, a lot of people think that strong cultures are like essential for success,
It's a common belief.
like those shared values, a clear purpose. It drives innovation and performance.
Makes sense on the surface, right?
Yeah, when everyone's on the same page, working towards the same goal.
Seems like it'd create a more cohesive, productive environment.
But you're calling it a myth.
Well, Grant's research suggests that strong cultures can actually be a double-edged sword.
Oh, how so?
Well, they can be great in stable environments.
Okay.
When things are changing rapidly, they can actually stifle originality
Really?
and prevent adaptation.
That's surprising. I would have thought a strong culture would make a company more resilient.
It seems logical,
Not less.
but think about it.
Okay.
When everyone's thinking the same way,
Yeah.
it becomes harder to question things.
To see the need for change.
Exactly.
It's like that saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
I've heard that one.
But in this case, it's culture eating originality
That's a good way to put it.
for breakfast.
The rise and fall of Polaroid.
Oh, yeah.
That's a cautionary tale.
What happened there?
They had this incredibly strong culture
Okay.
built around their founder, Edwin Land.
Right.
And that same culture that led to their early success
Uh-huh.
ultimately contributed to their downfall.
Didn't they totally miss the boat on the digital camera revolution?
They did.
I remember my parents were so sad when they had to switch from their Polaroids.
Yeah, they were so focused on instant photography,
Yeah.
they dismissed digital cameras.
They didn't see it come.
Land and his team, they were so convinced people would always want physical prints.
Wow.
They missed a massive opportunity
It just shows that even the most innovative companies can fall victim to their own success
if they're not willing to adapt.
if they're not willing to change.
That's the key.
So how do companies stay innovative and avoid getting stuck in their ways?
Well, Grant contrasts Polaroid's fate
Okay.
with the success of companies that prioritize commitment over star power.
Commitment over star power.
He's talking about companies that focus on building a team of people
Okay.
who are deeply committed to the mission,
Right.
rather than just hiring a bunch of brilliant individuals.
So it's about having a shared passion,
A shared dedication.
more than just individual brilliance.
Those companies often have cultures that are less about conforming,
Yeah, more about.
constructive disagreement.
Which brings us to another essential element of originality,
What's that?
the art of disagreement.
Ah, yes, the art of disagreeing well.
I think we could all use a little help with that.
It's a valuable skill.
How do we disagree constructively without letting it turn into an ego battle?
Well, Grant takes us into the world of Ray Dalio.
Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater.
That's right, the hedge fund known for its radical transparency.
I've heard about Bridgewater.
It's pretty intense.
Yeah, everyone's encouraged to challenge each other's ideas, no matter who they are.
That's the idea.
Is it really as open and honest as they say?
Dalio believes that this culture of open feedback
Yeah.
is crucial for good decision-making.
Okay.
He wants the best ideas to win, regardless of where they come from.
I can respect that.
He takes it seriously.
In what way?
He records almost every meeting,
Wow.
and encourages employees to constantly give each other feedback,
Even critical feedback.
even if it's tough to hear.
That's a lot of transparency. I'm not sure I could handle it.
It's not for everyone.
But they've been incredibly successful.
They have.
Bridgewater consistently outperforms the market.
What's the secret?
Yeah.
One key principle is believability-weighted decision-making.
Believability weighted.
It means that the weight of someone's opinion is based on their track record,
Oh, interesting.
how good they are at making decisions.
And their expertise in that area.
Exactly. So it's not just everyone having an equal voice.
Right.
It's about valuing expertise and experience.
You have to earn the right to have your opinion heard.
You have to prove you know what you're talking about.
Makes sense.
Dalio believes this leads to better decisions because the most informed perspectives have the most influence.
Makes sense to me.
But even with this system, there will be disagreements.
Of course, even experts can disagree.
So how do they handle that at Bridgewater?
Yeah, when there's no clear consensus.
They'll bring together the most believable people from each side
Okay.
and have them debate and discuss until they reach a resolution.
It's a culture that values both disagreement and the ability to work through it.
To find common ground.
But Grant argues that while debate is good for exploring different perspectives,
It's not always the best way to reach a decision.
what does he suggest instead?
Sometimes, the best way to resolve a disagreement
Is to...
test the different hypotheses.
Oh, interesting.
See which one holds up.
Like running experiments.
Exactly.
Instead of relying on opinions, even expert opinions,
Look for evidence.
A/B testing for ideas.
I like that.
So that's where Grant and Dalio differ.
They do.
Dalio believes debate is more efficient, while Grant thinks experimentation is more likely to get to the right answer.
In the long run.
It's fascinating to see these two brilliant minds disagree.
They both have valid points.
It shows that there's no one right way to make decisions.
Different approaches for different situations.
It's about being open to different ways of thinking,
Challenging your own assumptions.
always looking for ways to improve.
Speaking of challenging assumptions,
What about...
let's talk about emotions and originality.
Oh, yeah. There's this idea that originals are fearless.
Immune to doubt and anxiety.
But is that really true?
Not necessarily.
I didn't think so.
Grant explores the relationship between emotions and originality. He argues that emotions can both hold us back, propel us forward,
Okay.
and he offers some strategies for managing those emotions
To help us be more creative.
and take more risks.
So it's not about ignoring our emotions,
It's about harnessing them.
using them to our advantage.
One interesting concept he explores is defensive pessimism.
Defensive pessimism, what's that?
It sounds like a contradiction, right?
It does.
But it's a strategy some people use to manage anxiety.
Okay.
Instead of trying to be super positive or ignore their worries, they lean into their anxiety.
But they're not denying their fear.
They're embracing it.
That's interesting.
They imagine all the things that could go wrong.
And use that to motivate them to prepare.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Research shows that defensive pessimists often do better than optimists in high-pressure situations.
Because they're more prepared.
Exactly. They've already thought through those potential challenges.
Makes sense.
Grant highlights the story of Lewis Pugh.
Who's that?
He's an endurance swimmer, known for swimming in some really extreme places.
Like,
The Arctic Ocean, glacial lakes.
oh my gosh, that sounds terrifying.
It is.
Yeah.
But Pugh uses defensive pessimism to deal with his fear.
So he's using his fear to his advantage.
He imagines everything that could go wrong
Yeah.
and uses that to push himself to train harder.
And prepare for every possible scenario.
He's turning fear into fuel.
I love that, turning your fear into a superpower.
Grant also talks about channeling anger in a positive way.
Okay, because anger can be a powerful motivator,
It can,
but it can also be destructive.
if it's not directed properly.
Right, like venting your anger just makes you more
It
angry.
doesn't actually solve anything.
Look, what's a better way to deal with anger?
Grant suggests focusing on the victims of injustice
Okay.
instead of the people who made you angry.
Interesting.
Shift your attention to those who are suffering.
That's a really powerful shift in perspective.
It's about turning your anger into a force for good.
Instead of letting it eat you up.
He highlights the work of Srđa Popović,
Okay.
a Serbian activist who helped lead Otpor,
Otpor.
a nonviolent resistance movement that helped overthrow Slobodan Milosevic.
Wow.
They reframed the narrative around the protests.
Oh, okay.
Instead of focusing on the anger and frustration towards Milosevic,
Right.
they focused on the victims of his regime.
It's about empathy,
And compassion
bringing people together.
across different backgrounds and beliefs.
A reminder that even negative emotions can be a force for good.
If we channel them in the right direction,
It all comes back to strategy.
strategic thinking is key.
Not denying our feelings, but finding ways to use them to achieve our goals.
That's the power of emotional intelligence. So we've talked about managing our emotions,
Yeah.
but there's this other big hurdle that often stops us from acting on our original ideas.
I think I know what you're going to say, the fear of judgment.
You got it.
It's something we all struggle with, I think.
So common.
It can be paralyzing to put yourself out there knowing that your ideas might get rejected or ridiculed.
Yeah. Totally natural to feel that way.
Any advice on how to deal with that fear and build up the courage to take action?
Well, Grant offers some practical advice.
I'm all ears because I think we could all use a little boost in the courage department.
One thing that helps is finding a supportive audience.
So surrounding yourself with people who believe in you and your vision.
Yes, but it's not just about finding cheerleaders. You need people who will give you honest feedback, help you refine your ideas, and encourage you to keep going, even when things get tough.
It's about finding your tribe.
Exactly.
The people who get your vision are willing to support you along the way.
Those people are invaluable, especially when you're trying to do something different.
They give you that safe space to test things out and get constructive criticism.
And don't underestimate the value of getting feedback from people outside your usual circles.
Well, that's a good point.
Sometimes the most valuable feedback comes from people who bring a fresh perspective and aren't afraid to ask those dumb questions.
Which are often not so dumb after all.
Exactly. Those questions can help you see things in a whole new light, expose blind spots you didn't even know you had.
I like that the more diverse your sources of feedback, the better.
It's like getting a 360-degree view of your idea.
Makes sense.
Another strategy Grant highlights is the power of framing.
Framing.
How you present your ideas has a huge impact on how they're received.
So it's not just about the idea itself.
It's about the story you tell around it.
Right, like with Lucy Stone.
Exactly.
She was a leader in the suffrage movement.
And she was brilliant
She was able to get people on board with women's voting rights.
by framing it in terms of home protection.
That's clever. She tapped into a value that resonated with people, showed them how her idea connected to their lives.
It's about finding the right language to connect with people's values and motivations.
I see what you mean.
Sometimes it means kind of disguising your true intentions
Like holding back a little.
until you've built up enough support to reveal your bolder vision.
Is that what Grant calls the Trojan horse strategy?
That's the one.
He uses the example of Meredith Perry.
Oh, with the wireless power transfer.
Yeah, initially she pitched her idea as a way to make headphones sound better.
Because she knew that talking about a world without wires would have seemed too far-fetched at the time.
Right, people wouldn't have been ready for that.
It's like planting a seed
Letting it grow.
before revealing the full-blown flower.
I love that analogy.
It's a reminder that sometimes you need to be strategic,
Especially when your ideas are truly groundbreaking.
because not everyone's going to jump on board right away,
Right, it takes time and patience.
and a lot of persuasion to bring people around to your way of thinking.
That makes me think of another fascinating point. Grant makes the power of the mere exposure effect.
You mean the idea that just being exposed to something repeatedly can make us like it more?
Exactly.
He even uses a little trick in the book to demonstrate this.
The Sarek effect.
Yes, he keeps repeating this made-up term, Sarek effect.
And by the end of the book, you're like, hey, I kind of like the sound of that, even though it's completely meaningless.
It's a brilliant way to show how familiarity breeds liking.
So sometimes the best way to win people over isn't to argue or present data.
It's just to keep showing up and sharing your vision.
To make it familiar.
Exactly. Find creative ways to weave your ideas into conversations, share them in different contexts, and remind people why they matter.
Plant those seeds and let them grow.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into originality,
What are the key takeaways you want our listeners to walk away with?
the biggest one is that originality is a choice, not a trait.
We can all cultivate it.
By developing those habits of mind that allow us to see things differently, question our assumptions, challenge the status quo,
Embrace your inner nonconformist.
and find the courage to act on your unique perspective.
And it's a journey.
It's not a destination.
There will be setbacks and doubts and fears along the way.
But if you can learn to manage those emotions, build the right alliances, and keep pushing forward.
You can make a real difference.
And one final thought to leave you with. If even geniuses can get caught up in overconfidence, how can we cultivate the humility to constantly seek feedback and refine our own original ideas?
Because the journey of originality never really ends.
It's a lifelong process of learning, unlearning, and pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
So keep questioning, keep experimenting, and keep creating until next time. Keep diving deeper.